3 years ago, I bought my first home. I did everything right. I got pre-approved. I hired an agent with 5-star reviews. I showed up to every showing, asked all the questions, read everything they put in front of me, or at least everything they chose to put in front of me. We closed on a Tuesday. I remember feeling like I had finally figured out how this whole system worked. 2 months later, I found out my agent had a referral agreement with my home inspector. Not a friendship, not a casual recommendation, a financial arrangement. Every buyer my agent sent to that inspector, the inspector kicked money back. I was never told, it was never disclosed. And the inspection that came back on my house missed 3 things that cost me over $11,000 to fix. That's not a typo. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in real estate wants you to know. What happened to me wasn't an accident. It wasn't a bad apple. It was the system working exactly as designed. Real estate agents are legally allowed, in most states, to have financial relationships with inspectors, lenders, title companies, and contractors. They are legally allowed to not tell you about those relationships unless you specifically ask the right question in the right way at the right time. Most buyers never ask, because most buyers don't know there's a question to ask. That's what this video is about. There are 8 things your real estate agent gets paid, directly or indirectly, to hide from you. Not because all agents are criminals. Some of them are genuinely good people, but the industry structure, the commission model, the referral networks, and the legal fine print create a system where your agent's financial interests and your financial interests are pointing in completely opposite directions. And the system bets everything on the fact that you won't notice until after you've signed. I noticed. Eventually. The expensive way. You won't have to. Before we get into the list, let me be clear about something. I'm not here to tell you that real estate agents are evil. I'm not here to tell you to never use one or that the entire industry is corrupt. What I am here to tell you is this. An agent is paid on commission by the seller at closing. That single fact shapes every conversation you will ever have with them, whether they admit it or not. Understanding that doesn't make you cynical. It makes you protected. Every item on this list is something that exists in the gap between what agents are legally required to tell you and what they are financially incentivized to tell you. That gap is wider than you think. Let's start with the one that costs buyers the most money. Thing number 1 is dual agency. And it is one of the most quietly devastating arrangements in all of residential real estate. Here's what it means. In most states, a single agent or a single brokerage is legally allowed to represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. At the same time, think about that for a moment. The person negotiating the lowest possible price for you is the same person negotiating the highest possible price for the seller, and that person gets paid more when the price goes up. This sounds like it has nothing to do with loyalty until you realize that every dollar you save in negotiation is a dollar out of your agent's commission when they're representing both sides. The incentive to fight for you evaporates completely. Dual agency is legal in most states. It is disclosed, technically, somewhere in your paperwork, usually in a paragraph on page 4 of a 12-page disclosure document, written in the kind of language that a real estate attorney would need 2 reads to fully parse. It is almost never explained out loud. The fix is simple. Ask your agent directly at the very first meeting, before you sign any buyer representation agreement. Will you ever represent the seller and me at the same time in the same transaction? If the answer is anything other than a hard no, walk away. Dual agency is not an arrangement that benefits buyers. It exists because it benefits agents and brokerages. That's the only reason it's still legal. Thing number 2 is the preferred vendor network, and this is exactly what happened to me. Your agent will recommend people to you throughout the transaction: an inspector, a lender, a title company, a contractor for repairs, maybe an insurance broker. These recommendations will come to you framed as a personal favor. I've worked with this person for years. They're great. You can trust them. What they will not tell you is that many of those recommendations come with financial arrangements attached. Some of these are called affiliated business arrangements. They are technically disclosed, again, somewhere in your paperwork, again in small print. Some are referral fee agreements where the vendor pays the agent a percentage for every client sent their way. Some are looser kickback arrangements that are harder to trace but just as real. Here's the financial consequence that nobody explains. When your inspector has a financial relationship with your agent, your inspector has a quiet incentive to keep you calm, keep the deal together, and not find anything that kills the transaction. Because if the deal dies, the referral relationship becomes less valuable. An inspector who works independently, who you found yourself with no connection to your agent, has exactly one incentive. Tell you the truth about the house. Ask every single vendor your agent recommends. Do you have any referral arrangement or financial agreement with my agent or their brokerage? Watch the pause that follows. That pause tells you everything. Thing number 3 is something that will permanently change how you look at any price tag on a house. The list price is not an objective valuation of what a property is worth. It is a sales strategy decided by the seller and the seller's agent, often with very little connection to what the home would actually appraise for or what a reasonable buyer should pay. Prices are set high to create room for negotiation while still anchoring buyers to a number. Prices are set low intentionally to trigger bidding wars that drive the final sale above market value. Prices are set at specific psychological thresholds, $499,000 instead of $500,000 to crank. To manipulate how buyers perceive affordability, your agent knows all of this. What your agent will not tell you, because it complicates the sale, is what the house likely would appraise for, what comparable homes in the area actually sold for in the last 90 days, and whether the seller has had any offers fall through, and why. The chain seems indirect until you realize that your agent's commission is a percentage of the final sale price. A higher final number is a bigger check for your agent. The incentive to get you comfortable with a higher price is baked directly into how they get paid. Pull the comparable sales yourself. Use Zillow, Redfin, or Realtor.com to find closed sales within a half-mile radius, similar square footage sold in the last 60 to 90 days. Compare those numbers to what the seller's asking. The gap between those two numbers is your negotiating room, and your agent would prefer you never see it. Thing number 4 is one of the most dangerous legal gaps in the entire home buying process, and it is hiding in plain sight. Sellers are required, in most states, to disclose known defects with the property, water damage, roof issues, foundation problems, past flooding, pest infestations. The operative word in that sentence is known. If a seller claims they didn't know about a problem, they don't have to disclose it, and your agent, who represents you, has no legal obligation to investigate what the seller didn't put on the form. Here's what that looks like in practice. A house has had recurring water intrusion in the basement for 6 years. The seller paints the walls, puts down new flooring, and checks no known water issues on the disclosure form. Your agent walks through the property and doesn't notice the fresh paint in the corner. The inspection happens on a dry week in August. You close. In November, you discover the problem. This isn't hypothetical. It happens in thousands of transactions every year. Your agent should be pointing you toward disclosure gaps, asking follow-up questions, and recommending a specialized inspection if anything about the property's history seems unclear. Agents who are working for you do this. Agents who are working to close the deal as quickly as possible do not. Ask your agent specifically, are there any areas of this property where you'd recommend a specialized inspection beyond the standard general inspection? If they say no without walking the property carefully, that's your answer. Thing number 5 is 2 words that have cost buyers more money than almost any other phrase in a real estate contract. As is. When a seller lists a property as is, or when an as is clause appears anywhere in the purchase agreement, it means the seller is refusing to make any repairs, credits, or concessions regardless of what the inspection finds. You are agreeing to accept the property in whatever condition it is currently in. Your agent will often present this as standard language. It's pretty common. Most sellers do this now. What they will not tell you is the full financial implication of signing that clause before you know what the inspection is going to find. Signing an ASIS clause before the inspection means you have almost no leverage. The inspection becomes an information-gathering exercise rather than a negotiation tool. And in a competitive market where agents are pressuring buyers to waive contingencies to win offers, as-is language gets buried in the rush. The fix is to understand that as-is does not mean you cannot inspect the property. It does not mean you cannot walk away after the inspection. It does mean that your ability to negotiate repair credits after the inspection is severely limited. Never let your agent minimize as-is language. Never sign it without understanding exactly what contingencies you still have and whether you are comfortable absorbing whatever the inspection reveals entirely on your own. Thing number 6 will feel familiar to anyone who has ever felt rushed during a real estate transaction, because you were. Once an offer is accepted, a closing timeline is established, typically 30 to 60 days. What most buyers don't understand is that this timeline is not neutral. It is a pressure mechanism, and your agent knows exactly how to use it against your better judgment. As closing approaches, your agent will begin creating urgency. We need to move on the inspection response by Friday. The lender needs this document today, or we risk the rate lock. The seller is getting nervous. We need to commit to the repair list now. Some of this urgency is real. Some of it is manufactured to keep you from slowing down, asking more questions, or reconsidering a decision you haven't fully processed. Here's the uncomfortable truth that no agent will ever say out loud. Every day a transaction extends past the agreed closing date, there is risk of deal collapse, and deal collapse means no commission for anyone. Your agent, whatever their character, has a structural incentive to keep the timeline moving. That incentive does not always align with your need to be thorough. In most cases, you have more time than you're being told you have. Closing dates get extended, rate locks get renewed, sellers who are motivated will wait, but buyers who don't know this get pushed across the finish line before they're ready. Ask your agent specifically, what is the actual consequence if we request a 5-day extension on this deadline? The answer is almost always we ask and the seller either agrees or doesn't, not the crisis they're implying. Thing number 7 is the one that changes everything once you truly understand it. Not as a concept you've heard before, but as a financial reality you feel in every conversation. Your buyer's agent is paid by the seller. I know you've probably heard this. But let's follow the money all the way through, because most people stop too early. The seller agrees to pay a total commission, typically somewhere between 5 and 6% of the sale price, which is then split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Your agent's check comes from the seller's proceeds, not from you. This sounds like a gift. You get representation for free. And that's exactly how it's marketed to buyers. Here's what they don't tell you. Because your agent's commission is a percentage of the final sale price, and because that commission is paid by the seller, there are 3 invisible incentives working against you at all times. First, your agent makes more money the higher the price goes. Second, your agent makes nothing if the deal falls apart, which means they are financially incentivized to keep the deal alive even when you should walk away. Third, your agent's relationship with the listing agent, whom they may have worked with many times before, is often more valuable to them professionally than your single transaction. Your agent will work with other agents again. They will never see you again. This is not a conspiracy, it is math. The incentive structure of buyer representation, as it currently exists, is not designed for your benefit. It is designed to move transactions to closing. Know this. Navigate with it in mind. Thing number 8 is the one that is hardest to see because it's defined by absence. You will never know what your agent left out of your offer, what negotiation they didn't push for, what contingency they suggested skipping to make your offer more competitive, what seller concession they didn't ask for because they didn't want to risk the deal, what repair credit they could have fought for but decided wasn't worth the friction. This is not about agents who are deliberately dishonest. This is about agents who are managing multiple transactions, protecting their relationships with listing agents, and making judgment calls about how hard to push on your behalf, based on incentives that are not fully aligned with yours. Every real estate offer involves dozens of small decisions: contingency periods, earnest money amounts, inspection timelines, personal property inclusions, closing cost contributions from the seller, possession dates. Each of those decisions is a negotiation. And in each of those negotiations, your agent has discretion about how hard to push. You will never get a report card on those decisions. You will never know what was possible. You will only know what you got. Before you sign any offer, ask your agent directly. What are we not asking for that we could ask for? What concessions am I leaving on the table? Make them answer that question out loud. The answer will tell you more about whose interests they're protecting than any 5-star review ever could. 8 things. 8 things that the structure of this industry, not necessarily the character of individual agents, is financially set up to keep you from knowing. And here's what I want you to do with this. I don't want you to walk into your next real estate transaction paranoid. Paranoid buyers make bad decisions too. They walk away from good deals, they create unnecessary friction, they miss good agents who are genuinely trying to help. What I want you to be is informed. Informed buyers ask about dual agency before signing anything. Informed buyers find their own inspector, independent of their agent's network. Informed buyers pull comparable sales themselves and don't let a list price anchor their perception of value. Informed buyers read seller disclosures carefully and ask follow-up questions about anything that seems too clean. Informed buyers know that their agent is paid by the seller, that the commission increases as the price goes up, and that deal collapse means no paycheck for anyone in the room. That knowledge doesn't make you adversarial. It makes you someone who can't be taken advantage of without noticing. If I had known these 8 things 3 years ago, I would have hired my inspector independently. I would have asked about referral arrangements before accepting any recommendation. I would have asked my agent on day 1 whether dual agency was ever a possibility. I didn't know to ask, so I didn't ask, and I paid $11,000 for that gap in knowledge. The system is not going to teach you what you need to know to navigate it safely. That's not how the system is designed, but you just learned it, which means the next time you walk into a real estate transaction, you walk in differently. You know what dual agency is and why it works against you. You know what a preferred vendor network looks like and what questions to ask. You know that the list price is a strategy, not a truth. You know that disclosure forms have legal gaps that no one is required to fill for you. You know what this really means. You know that closing timelines are pressure tools. You know exactly who your agent is financially loyal to and why. And you know to ask, before every offer, what you're leaving on the table. 8 questions, 8 conversations. 8 moments where the information you now have is the difference between being protected and being the buyer who finds out the expensive way. Start with 1. Before you hire your next agent, ask them about dual agency. Just that one question. Watch how they answer it. Watch how comfortable they are with the question. Watch whether they explain it clearly or redirect you. That answer will tell you almost everything you need to know about whether you found an agent who works for you or one who works for the deal. The system bets on you not knowing. Now you know.